Dracula by Bram Stoker, Chapter 16. Dr. Seward's Diary continued. It was just 12:15 o'clock when we got into the churchyard over the low wall. The night was dark, with occasional gleams of moonlight between the rents of the heavy clouds that scudded across the sky. We all kept somehow close together, with Van Helsing slightly in front as he led the way. When we had come close to the tomb, I looked well at Arthur, for I feared that the proximity to a place laden with so sorrowful a memory would upset him, but he bore himself well. I took it that the very mystery of the proceeding tended in some way to counteract his grief. The professor unlocked the door, and seeing a natural hesitation among us for various reasons, solved the difficulty by entering first himself. The rest of us followed, and he closed the door. He then lit a dark lantern and pointed to the coffin. Arthur stepped forward hesitatingly. Van Helsing said to me, "You were with me here yesterday. Was the body of Miss Lucy in that coffin?" "It was." The professor turned to the rest of us, saying, "You hear, and yet there is one who does not believe with me." He took his screwdriver and again took off the lid of the coffin. Arthur looked on, very pale but silent. When the lid was removed, he stepped forward. He evidently did not know that there was a lead coffin, or that at any rate he had not thought of it. When he saw the rent in the lead, the blood rushed to his face for an instant, but as quickly fell away again, so that he remained of ghastly whiteness. He was still and silent. Van Helsing forced back the leaden flange, and we all looked in and recoiled. The coffin was empty. For several minutes no one spoke a word. The silence was broken by Quincy Morris. "Professor, I answered for you. Your word is all I want. I wouldn't ask such a thing ordinarily. I wouldn't so dishonor you as to imply a doubt, but this is a mystery that goes beyond any honor or dishonor. Is this your doing?" "I swear to you by all that I hold sacred that I have not removed nor touched her. What happened was this. 2 nights ago my friend Seward and I came here. With good purpose, believe me. I opened that coffin, which was then sealed up, and found it, as now, empty. We waited then, and saw something white come through the trees. The next day we came here in daytime, and she lay there. Did she not, friend John?" "Yes." "That night we were in just time, for one more small child was missing, and we find it, thank God, unharmed amongst the graves. Yesterday I came here before sundown, for at sundown the undead can move. I waited here all night till sun rose, but I saw nothing. It was most probable that it was because I had laid over the clumps of these doors garlic, which the undead cannot bear, and other things which they shun. Last night there was no exodus, so tonight before sundown I took away my garlic and other things, and so it was we find this coffin empty. But bear with me, so far there is much that is strange. Wait you with me outside, unseen, unheard, and things much stranger are yet to be. So," here he shut the dark slit of his lantern, "now to the outside." He opened the door. We filed out. He came last, and locking the door behind him. Oh, but it seemed fresh and pure in the night air after the terror of that vault. How sweet it was to see the clouds race by, and the brief gleams of the moonlight between the scudding clouds crossing and passing, like the gladness and sorrow of a man's life. How sweet it was to breathe the fresh air that had no taint of death and decay. How humanizing to see the red light of the sky beyond the hill, and to hear far away the muffled roar that marks the life of a great city. Each in his own way was solemn and overcome. Arthur was silent, and was, I could see, striving to grasp the purpose and the inner meaning of the mystery. I was myself tolerably patient, and half inclined again to throw aside doubt and to accept Van Helsing's conclusions. Quincy Morris was phlegmatic in the way of a man who accepts all things, and accepts them in the spirit of cool bravery. With hazard of all he was at stake. Not being able to smoke, he cut himself a good-sized plug of tobacco and began to chew. As to Van Helsing, he was employed in a definite way. First he took from his bag a mass of what looked like thin, wafer-like biscuit, which was carefully rolled up in a white napkin. Next he took out a double handful of some whitish stuff, like dough or putty. He crumbled the wafer up fine and worked it into the mass between his hands. This he then took and rolled it into thin strips, began laying them into crevices between the door and its setting in the tomb. I was somehow puzzled by this, and being close asked him what it was that he was doing. Arthur and Quincy drew near also, as they were too curious. He answered, "I am closing the tomb so that the undead may not enter." "And is that stuff you have put there going to do it?" asked Quincy. "Great Scott, is this a game?" "It is." "What is that you are using?" This time he question was by Arthur. Van Helsing reverently lifted his hat as he answered, "The host. I brought it from Amsterdam. I have an indulgence." It was an answer that applied the most sceptical of us, and we felt individually that in the presence of such earnest purpose as the Professor's, a purpose which could thus use to him the most sacred of things, it was impossible to distrust. In respectful silence we took the places assigned to us close round the tomb, but hidden from sight of anything approaching. I pitied the others, especially Arthur. I had myself apprenticed by my former visits to this watching horror, and yet I, who had up to an hour ago repudiated the proofs, felt my heart sink within me. Never did tombs look so ghastly white. Never did cypress or yew or juniper so seem the embodiment of funeral gloom. Never did the tree or grass wave or rustle so ominously. Never did bough creak so mysteriously. Never did the far-away howling of dogs send such a woeful presage through the night. There was a long spell of silence, a big aching void, and then from the Professor a keen "sss." He pointed, and far down the avenue of yews we saw a white figure advance. A dim white figure which held something dark at its breast. The figure stopped, and at the moment a ray of moonlight fell between the masses of driving clouds and showed in startling prominence a dark-haired woman, dressed in the cerements of the grave. We could not see the face, for it was bent down over what we saw to be a fair-haired child. There was a pause and a sharp little cry such as a child gives in sleep, or a dog as it lies before the fire and dreams. We were starting forward, but the Professor's warning hand, seen by us as he stood behind a yew tree, kept us back. And then, as we looked, the white figure moved forward again. It was now near enough for us to see clearly, and the moonlight still held. My own heart grew cold as ice, and I could hear the gasp of Arthur as we recognized the features of Lucy Westenra. But yet how changed! The sweetness was turned to adamantine, heartless cruelty, and the purity to voluptuous wantonness. Van Helsing stepped out, and, obedient to his gesture, we all advanced too, the four of us ranged in a line before the door of the tomb. Van Helsing raised his lantern and drew the slide. By the concentrated light that fell on Lucy's face we could see that the lips were crimson with fresh blood, and that the stream had trickled over her chin and stained the purity of her lawn death robe. We shuddered with horror. I could see by the tremendous light that even Van Helsing's iron nerve had failed. Arthur was the next to me, and if I had not seized his arm and held him up, he would have fallen. When Lucy, I call the thing that was before us Lucy because it bore her shape, saw us, she drew back with an angry snarl, such as a cat gives when taken unawares. Then her eyes ranged over us. Lucy's eyes in form and colour, but Lucy's eyes unclean and full of hellfire, instead of the pure, gentle orbs we knew. At that moment the remnant of my love passed into hate and loathing. As she had then to be killed, I could have done it with savage delight. As she looked, her eyes blazed with unholy light, and the face became wreathed with a voluptuous smile. Oh God, how it made me shudder to see it! With a careless motion she flung it to the ground, callous as a devil, the child that up to now she had clutched strenuously to her breast, growling over it as a dog growls over a bone. The child gave a sharp cry and lay there moaning. There was a cold bloodlessness in the act which wrung a groan from Arthur. When she advanced to him with outstretched arms and a wanton smile, he fell back and hid his face in his hands.